40% of adults in the United States have been affected by a brain injury at some point in time. East Texas News Weekend's Alex Weister spoke with a sports medicine specialist to learn more for you.
There are many types of brain injuries that can happen, some more common than others.
That can be from scalp bruises to bleeding inside the brain would be kind of worst case scenario. And one of the main ones we talk about is concussion.
According to the Brain Injury Association of America, over 560,000 children are seen for brain injuries each year.
Most commonly it causes headache, but with the brain having so many functions for our lives, it can affect anything from sight, sound, sensitivity to noise, dizziness.
John Evans, a sports medicine specialist with CHRISTUS, says that brain injuries, especially in children, need to be much more closely monitored.
As they're developing in their brain, if we have a major traumatic event, that can disrupt some of their growth. Definitely the younger the kid is, we want to decrease the risk of them having a concussion as much as possible.
Evans says that one concussion won't have a significant long-term impact most times, but he says they can make you more susceptible to future injuries, which could cause changes in your brain. Any injury also must be fully cleared by a doctor before any sort of physical contact.
If we have a repeat concussion while we're healing from one, then that can cause very long-term effects.
Going to the doctor can help determine what the type of injury is, and follow-up visits can track if things are getting better or worse. But in the case of injuries like concussions, only time can help.
There's a lot of studies being done both for prevention and for recovery, and it's still a developing field.
Alex Weister, East Texas News Weekend.
Evans says that awareness about the seriousness of brain injuries has grown significantly over the years, with multi-step protocols becoming standard before patients are ever cleared.